Good morning, guys. Let's stand and worship this morning.
Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you, oh, we live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever say, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you, oh, we live for you. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever say, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you, oh, we live for you. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder.
this morning. Today we have the counseling panel coming in, and we're speaking on loneliness, and we just want to focus our hearts this morning on the fact that there is healing in Jesus' name, and that he has come to bring us hope, that that's what he came down for, that's what he died for, was right relationship with him, and a peace and a hope, and he welcomes us home.
Lord, I confess that I've been a criminal. I've stolen your breath and sang my own song. Lord, I confess that I'm far from innocent. These shackles I wear, I bought on my own. Scarlet sins had a crimson cost. You nailed my debt to that old rugged cross. An empty slate at the empty grave. Thank God that stone was rolled away. Lord, I confess I've been the prodigal, made for your house, but walked my own roads. Then Jesus came and tore down my prison walls. Death came to life when he called me by name. Scarlet sins had a crimson cost. You nailed my debt to that old rugged cross. An empty slate at the empty grave. Thank God that stone was rolled. Scarlet sins had a crimson cost. You nailed my debt to that old rugged cross. An empty slate at the empty grave. Thank God that stone was rolled away. I see bright crimson robes draped over the ashes, a wide open tomb where there should be a casket. The children are singing and dancing and laughing. The Father is welcoming. This is our homecoming. Roses in bloom pushed up from the embers. Rivers of tears flow from good times remembered. Families are singing and dancing and laughing. The Father is welcoming. This is our homecoming. Heaven joins in with the glorious sound. When the great cloud of witnesses
God, thank you so much that you made a way for us to come home, Lord. Thank you so much for the message that we're going to hear soon and the hope that you have. I pray that this morning our hearts would be pointed towards the hope in your name. And let's sing this again. I see bright crimson robes.
I see bright crimson robes draped over the ashes, a wide open tomb where there should be a casket. The children are singing and dancing and laughing. The Father is welcoming. This is our homecoming. Roses in bloom pushed up from the embers. Rivers of tears flow from good times remembered. Families are singing and dancing and laughing. The Father is welcoming. This is our homecoming. Heaven joins in with the glorious sound, and the great cloud of witnesses all gather round. 'Cause the ones that were lost were finally found. The Father is welcoming. This is our homecoming. Scarlet sins out of crimson cross. You nailed my debt to that old rugged cross. An empty slave at the empty grave. Thank God that stone was rolled. Oh, 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 oh. The Father is welcoming. This is our homecoming. Oh, 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 the Father is welcoming. This is our homecoming. Hold me now in the hands that created the heavens. Find me now where the grace runs deep as your scars. You pulled me from the clay, set me on a rock, called me by your name, and made my heart whole again. Lifted up, and my knees know it's all for your glory, that I might stand with more reasons to sing than to fear. Pulled me from the clay, set me on a rock, called me by your name, made my heart whole again. So here I stand, high in surrender.
shame remains. Left for dead in your way. You crashed those age-old gates. You left no stone unturned. You stepped out of that grave. Shouldered me all the way. So here I stand, high in surrender. I need you now. Hold my heart now and forever. My soul cries out. Once I was broken, 'cause you loved my whole heart through. Sin has no hold on me, 'cause your grace holds me now. Healed and forgiven. Look where my chains are now. Death has no hold on me, 'cause your grace holds that ground. Healed and forgiven. Look where my chains are now. Death has no hold on me, 'cause your grace holds that ground. Grace holds me now. Grace holds me now. Grace holds me now. Grace holds me now. So here I stand, high in surrender. I need you now. Hold my heart now and forever. My soul cries out. So here I stand, high in surrender. I need you now. Hold my heart now and forever. My soul cries out. One more time. So here I stand, high in surrender. I need you now. Hold my heart now and forever. My soul cries out. Once I was broken, but you loved my whole heart through. Sin has no hold on me, 'cause your grace holds me now. Healed and forgiven. Look where my chains are now. Death has no hold on me, 'cause your grace holds that ground. Your grace holds me now. Your grace holds me now. Grace holds me now. Grace holds me now. Healed and forgiven. Look where my chains are now. Death has no hold on me, 'cause your grace holds that ground. Amen. Dear God, we come expectant this morning to hear from you and to be in your presence, Lord. Thank you so much that we get to be. I pray for the counseling panel that's going to come up right now, Lord. I pray that you give them the words that would point us towards your hope. And it's in your name we pray. 'Amen. 'Amen. You may be seated.
You may be seated. got one? Oh, we'll share. Yeah. Okay. They'll just pass back and forth. Hey, everybody. So we are talking about loneliness today, and I just wanted to just quickly talk about why we're talking about loneliness. We are talking about loneliness because statistically speaking, for Gen Z, which is you guys, 3 out of every 4 of you say that they struggle with loneliness. Okay, so let's just represent that in the room right now. We have 4 sections. I want this section to stay seated, and I want the other 3 sections to stand up. Go ahead and stand up. Now, this is just statistically, all right? I mean, may not necessarily be representative here, but like look around in this room. This is how many people, those that are standing in your generation, that would say that they struggle with loneliness. Go ahead, you can sit back down. Say that they struggle with loneliness. So Gen Z then has been labeled as the loneliest generation in modern American history, which is just really, really interesting. So loneliness is something that we need to take seriously, and it can have a pretty big effect on your life. So in this series, we're going to be talking essentially about like why loneliness is a problem, why your generation might be struggling with it so much, and what to do about it, and where to go, and how to handle it, and how to think about it. So that's what we're going to be doing in this series. Do we have my splash slide that I can show, that I can preview what's happening? Awesome. So today we have the counseling panel, the 18th. And then next week we have 2 speakers. We have Tim Keller, not the Tim Keller, which is why I put him as T.D. Keller. He works for the district office up in Pennsylvania with the Christian Missionary Alliance. He's a ministry leader, has dealt with this topic in churches so many times before, and he's going to be talking to us about that on Tuesday. And then Jack Eason is an author who just recently published a book on loneliness and Gen Z. So I'm really excited to hear from him as well and just hear what he has to say. But that's what's coming up. So what we're going to do right now, I got some questions that I'm going to be asking the counseling panel, but also go ahead and show the next slide. As we are answering questions and talking about this topic, this is a number that you can text your questions into. If you have a question about loneliness, we're going to run through some stuff that I've pre-planned, but I also want to hear from you guys, our studio audience, on what you think and what you're thinking through. So with that said, we have a short amount of time. So let's just do just a brief introduction, what your name is and what you do, and then we're going to launch right into this discussion.
I'm Jessica Middlebrooks. I'm the student counselor over in the Wellness Center.
My name is Rebecca Smith, and I'm an intern at the Counseling Center.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Corey Hawkins, and I'm also an intern in the Wellness Center.
Hey, y'all. I'm Jimmy Hubler. I'm also an intern counselor. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, let's welcome them. My name is Jordan Brown, and I'm also an intern at the Counseling Center, and we're going to start talking about these things right now, which is, first of all, we all know what loneliness is, right? We've experienced it before. We know people that have. When does loneliness become a problem, right? Like it's a universal thing at some point in life, but when does it start to become a problem, especially from like a counseling perspective?
I think when you become so lonely that you begin to isolate yourself, and you kind of step away from things that you used to enjoy, and you start to avoid things because of that loneliness, it can definitely become a problem.
Yeah, I think that whenever loneliness starts to affect your self-perception, so it's okay to be alone. Some of us introverts like to be alone. But whenever you are lonely, you feel lonely, and then you start having the thoughts of, okay, well, I'm no good, people don't like me, and that's why I'm lonely. So I think that is one of the indicators that loneliness may be a problem in your life.
Yeah, I would also say that, just like Jimmy has mentioned, when you start asking yourself those questions, what's wrong with me? Why do people not want to be around me? And that contributes to your loneliness, and it makes it worse. That's when you're starting to see a pattern, and you're starting to realize that, okay, maybe this is a little bit bigger than what I thought it was.
And I completely agree with everything that's already been said. You know, if it starts to look at there's something wrong with me, and that causes more isolation and feeling not even wanting to make an attempt to connect, that would be when it would become a problem.
Yeah, I think that's good. And even I was picking out. Go ahead and show the first the splash again. I was trying to pick out a background picture for the splash, and I was looking at all these pictures of people alone, and I thought like, oh, that looks kind of nice. You know, like they're out in the mountains, right? They're having fun by themselves. So being alone is not necessarily loneliness, as you guys are highlighting. I completely agree. There's something deeper than that. So with that said, what would you say? You know, what symptoms are there of loneliness? You know, like what ways can loneliness impact other areas of our life? You know, whether it be mental, physical, spiritual, emotional. What would you say to that?
So I think some of the symptoms could even mimic depression or sadness, just that need, that feeling of overwhelming emptiness. And I think the physical things that can go along with that is just the lack of motivation. Okay, I already feel alone, and if I make an attempt to put myself in this crowd and I'm rejected, this is going to make me feel even worse. So I think that's something that we can definitely struggle with when we feel lonely. It mimics depression and sadness.
Maybe also you experience an increase in how tired you are, physically speaking. You find it hard to get up or out of bed, or it would just be easier to take a nap or go back to sleep. And then spiritually speaking, you know, distance between you and the Lord, experiencing that distance, not wanting to read your Bible or go to chapel, things of that sort.
Yeah, and I think a mental component of it is kind of what we mentioned earlier. Is just, you know, what are you saying to yourself, and reinforcing kind of those negative things that you might be saying or that might be creeping in, like I'm no good, or no one likes me, no one wants to be around me. And then, you know, that can in turn affect your motivation to get out, because why get out if no one is going to accept me? And so it's a bit like a snowball effect, I think. If, you know, it gets to that point, it can be. So I think those are some of the symptoms that you can see with loneliness.
I want to take a question from the audience that actually connects with what I was going to ask next. And go ahead and show the number one more time on the panel if anybody wants to ask more questions. But this person asks, why do I feel lonely if I have friends? And specifically, I want to address that because sometimes people talk about feeling lonely, you know, even when they're actually being around people, you know. So how would you suggest someone combat loneliness, and specifically in that situation where maybe they even have people that they're around, but they just still feel lonely? What do they do? How are they supposed to handle that?
The first thing that comes to mind for me is a verse in Matthew, and I'm taking it out of context a little bit, but there's a part in there that says, "Depart from me, for I knew you not." And the "I knew you not," Jesus is saying that he didn't know us, not that we didn't know him. And so I think there's a part of loneliness that we can combat, and it's hard, is vulnerability and allowing other people to really see the true us. And to see who we are, and allowing ourselves to be open to that, and to be able to share who we are and let people inside, is one way that I see of being able to just combat that. Not that it's easy, but I do think that once we can come to a place where we're comfortable with ourselves and letting people in, sometimes that loneliness can be healed through that.
Right. It's about making those quality relationships and those connections, you know, being around people who do fill you up as opposed to drain you, and being sure that you are surrounding yourself with people that you do believe are quality friends or quality family members that pour into you and give you those positive feelings as opposed to draining you or making things a little more difficult.
And I think, too, keeping in mind that quality and quantity are two different things. You know, you may be in like a group of 10, 20 plus people and think, okay, I should be happy around all these folks. We're having a good time doing this and whatever. But if you haven't made the time, as Corey and Rebecca have already shared, to connect with these people at a soul level, for those of you who are believers, connecting with other believers and sharing things. Now, is it true that you don't have to share your whole story with everybody? 100%. But making sure that you have at least one person that is a quality friend that you're comfortable sharing these types of things with, to do life together. So while it may look lonely to the outside world that you only have one or two people that you're super close to, that's okay, because we were having this conversation last week in the Wellness Center, and Beth, the lady that runs our front desk, she said, sometimes the most lonely you can feel is in a big crowd because you don't feel seen. You may want to look like everything's okay, but knowing that it isn't, and just finding those one or two people that are quality friends. So to sum up, focus on quality as opposed to quantity.
Yeah, and I think you can get so much life through that one connection. If that one person knows you for who you are and they accept you, then I think in turn you can take meaningful risks with other people. If one person can accept me for who I am, then maybe this other person might. And then you might find yourself taking some more risks with other people, introducing yourself, getting to know them on a deeper level. So that one meaningful relationship might empower you to really take those meaningful risks with others as well, which would in turn hopefully help you feel more connected overall.
I like that. And just the whole idea of being vulnerable, right, is what everyone's talking about. And if you're feeling lonely and you're with people, it sounds to me that you're just not letting them in to your world, you know, like you're kind of just trying to stuff how you're feeling and just acting out how you think they want you to behave, essentially, which isn't always a good thing. You're not letting them in. You're not being vulnerable. You're not relating to them in that deep way that you all have been talking about. Yeah, that's really good. I like that. So what about faith, right? Like, I mean, when we think about loneliness, we're thinking more of like a person or a people issue. How does this connect with faith? And, you know, can you receive an answer from your loneliness purely from your relationship with the Lord, or should we be looking broader than that? Or what are your thoughts on just the connection between faith and loneliness?
One, I think we were created for community. We were created for relationship. You know, in Genesis it says it wasn't good for Adam to be alone, so he created Eve. So being alone is not good because we were created for community. I also think that we were first and foremost created for a vertical relationship with the Lord. And a lot of times I won't use the word we, I'll use I. A lot of times I seek to fill my worth with all of these outside relationships instead of seeking to deepen my relationship vertically with the Lord. And through that relationship, learning who I truly am and who my true worth is, that allows me the freedom to be who I was created to be and building relationships with those around me.
Yeah, and I think something helpful could be just reminding yourself of the truth that, you know, God will never leave you or forsake you. He's given us the Holy Spirit to live in us. And so reminding us, like, I might feel lonely, and that's really difficult and challenging. But knowing that God, because I feel lonely, doesn't change the fact that God is still with me. And so I think reminding myself of that, or reminding yourself of that if you are feeling lonely, could be helpful, just to remind yourself of truth.
I have a question. Someone wrote in and said, you know, what do I do with a friend who I feel like is lonely? How do I help them? Or even, you know, maybe if it's not a close friend, but somebody that you're just interacting with, maybe someone that's a part of your hall. that you're just recognizing this person seems like they're really lonely. What do you do for them? What can you do to help?
I think the most basic thing that you can do is reach out. You know, sometimes it can be a little awkward or a little uncomfortable, but it's important to remember that you don't know what is going on for your roommate or the person that lives across the hall from you. But just to reach out and say, hey, you know, I just wanted to check on you today and see how you're doing, and would you like to go to lunch with me? Just the basic things can make the biggest difference.
I think, too, we talk a lot about being welcoming to others, but we don't necessarily talk about including others. And instead of just saying, hey, I'm glad you're here, saying, hey, come join me in what I'm doing. So when you're, going for a walk, invite them to go for a walk. If you're going out, to eat, inviting them to go out to eat in true authenticity. I think authentic is important. I also think that your generation is unique in that most of you have never been without technology. And we tend to make a habit of, I'm going to send them a text or I'm going to send them a Snapchat and let them know that I care. But I think we were created for physical connection of being in the presence of other people. And while those things are great, and I love getting texts and messages that knowing that people are praying for me or care, but there's something very different about walking to their room and sitting down, or hey, let's go outside and sit in the park and have a conversation, or let's go get coffee. Those things are just on another level of connection for humanity.
Yeah, and I think to piggyback off of both those, I think, not all of us are big talkers or want to go out and play soccer on the intramural field or whatever. It could just be like, hey, could I come do homework in your room with you? And it could just be a completely a time where you just spend just in proximity with another person, and maybe no words need to be said or have to be said for that other person who might feel lonely to feel connected.
Yeah, I like just this whole idea of it being a two-way street when we're talking about loneliness, because we can talk as much as we want about what an individual can do if they're feeling lonely, but it's not just the individual's responsibility. It's our community and our community's responsibility to try to help this issue on campus. So, for example, someone wrote in and they said, "All of my friends are in serious relationships or married. How do I live life feeling so left out and alone?" And I think part of the answer for that is that there's part of the responsibility on your friends to recognize, like, yeah, when you start dating somebody, right, when you start getting into a serious relationship, don't just, abandon your friends. Don't just abandon the relationships that you have. Like, try to have a little bit more balance with that, and make sure that your friends don't feel like you've just completely checked out. I think that's part of it as well. Okay, so let's talk about the Gen Z question. I threw out that statistic earlier that about 3/4, about 75% of Gen Zers report feeling lonely. What's going on, in your opinion, specifically with Gen Z, specifically with students that are this age, that were sitting in the room, that might be different from different generations? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we all had an interesting time going through that question earlier today, different perspectives. Now, keep in mind, up here you have Gen X and millennials, so no one part of your generation. And when we have our open house this afternoon from about 11:15-ish till 4, come by, see us. If you want to sign up for counseling, we're going to have like goodies to eat. We're going to have a bowl, and we would like for you to put in your answers for what you think. I think my generation feels lonely because, and it's going to help us get a better idea of how to be able to help y'all, because we just don't understand from your perspective because we're not there. But I think it's interesting to think about how, and if you think back to maybe pre-COVID, about how maybe you felt how, maybe all the connection I need is Instagram or Snapchat. And, that's when I do the most of it. But then COVID hit, and we were all in very teeny tiny little bubbles. and started really seeing how not being in a room with somebody, not being 6 feet apart, how it really affected us. And I think understanding how I need that physical connection, I need to know how to have a healthy face-to-face conversation with somebody, and understanding how to establish that in a good, healthy way. So that's my perspective, but I'm looking very forward to hearing y'all's perspective on that as well.
Jessica, yeah, I think you're right. A lot of you have experienced it, and I'm not very far off from you, but I finished my 4-year degree from Toccoa in the middle of COVID. You know, we went from being able to sit in classrooms together and go to basketball games and, you know, have lunch together to we got to see each other on Zoom calls. And all of a sudden, you have to realize that proximity does matter, even if you're not having those conversations. Just being in a room with someone makes such a difference.
I also think that y'all are a generation that can, in some ways, do nothing in secret. There's always a cell phone camera or something going on. So you may tend to have your guard up maybe more to impact your ability to be vulnerable. I'm just guessing. And so there's this pressure to always be on your best and present your best self. And I think that can impact when we are so focused on presenting our best self instead of being able to be real. And I think we all need a place. Somebody said earlier, to be seen. Like, I'm putting forth myself, but that's not me, and I really want you to see the real me deep down. And that's hard in our society today, not just for your generation, but for, I think, every generation, is the pressure to put forth your best instead of being able to be. It's like a dichotomy, I guess. I want to put forth my best, and I really don't want you to see the real me, but really, if you evaluate it, I really do want you to see the real me. And I think that can cause part of the problem as well.
I was recently talking with one of my professor mentors from my alma mater, and one of the things that he was talking about, and I think it's so true, is that Gen Z, more than any other generation, is struggling with self-identity and just trying to find who they are. Your generation, more than any generation in modern history, just doesn't have a firm grasp of who you are and what you're about, and that clear sense of identity. And so I think that really plays into loneliness, because you get more afraid about being vulnerable when you don't even know who you are, and you're kind of trying to test the waters and trying to figure it out. So when you're in that place where you're kind of insecure about yourself, you certainly, and you don't feel good about yourself, you certainly don't want to reveal that aspect of yourself, those deeper aspects of yourself, to other people. So it makes it harder. You want to hide that more, and you figure, like, okay, once I figure it out, like, then I can present myself to the world. Okay, one last question here. Someone sent in, which is essentially, how do I talk to my friends about being lonely when I don't want to be a burden to them? Like, you don't want to be that person that's always coming across as so needy, right? But yet you do kind of have needs. So what would you say to someone that feels that way? They don't want to burden their friends, but they do have this feeling of loneliness.
When you're saying that, I'm automatically thinking about the 75% that are lonely. So, which would mean that your friend there's a high chance they are also lonely. And then I also think about the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And while you may feel like it's a burden to say, hey, I'm lonely, help me, you can say, hey, let's go get coffee. I'm the lonely one, but I'm going to invite you to get coffee because that may be beneficial for you as well, and it's helping me, is the first thing that comes to mind with that question.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic point. Like Rebecca mentioned earlier, God created us to be social. And there's a high chance, hey, you want to go grab some coffee? Yeah, good. It doesn't have to be something like, oh, okay, well, it's not going to require, 10 action steps to make me feel not lonely anymore. It could just be a meaningful time with a friend that might be really helpful. It might actually give you maybe confidence to ask another friend out to coffee. And so just taking little baby steps like that could be really helpful and really empowering even for you. And knowing that, like Rebecca said, you might feel like you are a burden, but it could be the other person feels that way too. Maybe they're thinking the exact same thing and they're waiting for you to reach out. And so taking that baby step forward can mean all the difference.
And I think, too, it's important to remember the Bible's clear about us as a Christ-centered community as Christians about bearing one another's burdens. And I know we're about out of time, but I feel led to say this. You're not a burden. You have a burden.
That's good.
I think there's a big difference between that. Saying, I am a burden says there's a problem with me. There's a problem how I feel. There's a problem how I think. No, you're not a burden. You have a burden. And find that quality relationship with your brothers and sisters in Christ and allow them to be able to help you handle that burden.
Counseling office is having an open house today from 11:15 to 4. Come down. Let us know what you think about Gen Z and why your generation is so lonely. With that, you are dismissed. Have a great rest of the day.